You may recall earlier one of the things that was said is that when a class inherits from an abstract class or when a class implements an interface, it's obliged to implement all of the abstract methods that exist, and if it misses any of them, it becomes an abstract class itself, which is probably not what we want to happen. Now, as Java developed, what would happen is interfaces would be modified and have new features added, and in some cases that would make existing code that was working fine with an older version of Java stop working because a new method had been introduced in for a particular interface in a new version of Java. Suddenly code that was working fine would stop working because certain classes that had implemented all the required methods in a particular interface suddenly found there was a new method that was not known about at the time of the implementation of that class, and now suddenly that class would suddenly look abstract. To get around this problem, starting in Java 8, we introduced the idea of a default interface method. This permits the developer of an interface to include a particular method so that if it's not implemented in a class that uses it, the default method will apply. What this means now is that if you have an old system with classes that are already using an interface, you can develop that interface and add a new method and make sure you define a default method that goes with the new method, and that way older classes that are already implementing it will continue to work just fine. In new implementations, new classes that want to implement this interface can still override the default implementations, but they don't have to. Another change is that Java 8 also permits public static methods in an interface, which wasn't the case before. Here is how this would look syntactically. In an interface, we could say public interface A and then public default void do something. And now a new class that's implementing this interface can override that, but if there's already an existing class that was already using interface A and this is a new method, this new method will now be implemented as the default method since it wouldn't be overwritten in some older existing class that had been implementing this interface. And of course the other thing starting with Java 8 is the ability for us to do what you see on the bottom of the slide, that is declare public static in get a value, for example.